Hello and welcome back. This is Randall Meek with the Philippines Project, and I'm here to tell you another story about my first trip to the Philippines. So get ready. So it was 2007 when my wife and I decided that we would go back to the Philippines. We'd been married in 2001, and I had never been to the Philippines. And so I got my first idea of what it might be like. It seemed like every Saturday, Sunday morning, we would lay in bed and she would talk to me about the Philippines and tell me stories about things that happened in the Philippines and just how life was. It was just so fascinating to me that it really sparked an interest in me, trying to get to the Philippines and just experience that lifestyle or the culture for myself. And I always have been interested in travel. Ever since, I guess, probably my 20s, I just really wanted to go. And so this was the first international trip I really had ever been on. So this is what this is about. I remember, I'll just tell you basically about the descent into the Philippines. So start there in the airplane, and it was like a 24-hour flight, right? Everybody, if you research it at all, the flight is very long. And so we were tired, and I had no idea what to expect when I got there. And it seemed like it was probably 11 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't really remember. We landed in the Philippines, and this big, 747 or whatever, but I don't know what kind of plane it was. But we got off, and we wait and get the baggage and everything out of the overhead container, and we walk down the aisle. I never will forget that first kind of, I'll call it a blast of air, when I got off the plane. This is 2007, and the Naya Airport, the Air Terminal 1 in the Philippines, in Manila, was about, and I could be wrong, I think they had 2 terminals back then, but it was not air conditioned. And not air conditioned really doesn't cover it. It's just like this humid, just blast. It just hits you directly in the face, and it's like, as an American, and used to comfort and everything being easy, and it was just a different experience. I mean, it's like, oh my God, and I'm a guy. I think I was built for probably living in the northern areas in a colder climate, but man, this hot air just blasted me in the face. So we just walked down the corridor toward the main part of the airport, and where we're gonna get our baggage and all that stuff, and walk down this long hallway and all these uniformed people, and pretty amazing. One thing that you do notice when you first get here, there's a lot of like police, guards, and that around the area. So it kind of struck me, and I remember, and you got to remember, this is my first time, so these are my first impressions of being here. So we got in there, and they have this big duty-free shop, and I can't remember. I don't think we bought anything that time, but we walked through, and what I did not know, and this is a Filipino tradition with families when they have somebody visiting from abroad, that there's a lot of people that show up to pick them up at the airport. Kind of, it may not be the same now as it was back then, but I'm sure it's done a lot. I know my family here, they like to come up and greet us at the airport, and then we drive back home. Well, when we got to the airport, there was her brother and sister-in-law that met us there, and her mom. They were traveling together, and they came into Manila to get us and pick us up from the airport. And I saw her mom for the second time. I'd actually met her in Singapore, where I met my wife for the first time. So I knew who she was, and her brother Arvin was there, and his wife Jenny. And so, we met them, and it was a great reunion, and they hugged and everything, and it's pretty emotional stuff. And so we walk out, and of course, being English speaker, I did not know all the conversations that are going on. I don't know. It's totally strange to me, totally new. And so it's kind of a little bit of a culture shock. You know, there's just so much coming at you all at one time. So we get out and we get our luggage, and we're pushing our little cart out there, so we get out to the parking lot and we wave at some people, or they wave at us, and we wave back. It was her family, her extended family on her dad's side, and her dad had already passed away, so he wasn't there. But come to find out, they had rented a big van, and it was just full of people, and we're trying to get the luggage in there and get Flora in there, and Arvin, the brother, and the wife, and Flora's mother, Patricia, all trying to get in the van with the other people that were in there. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, who are all these people, you know? Just, it was like this thing that they do, though, you know, and so I finally got in the front seat, and there was a driver there. You know, a lot of Filipinos don't drive. They'll hire somebody for a little bit longer distance. Where we were going was at least a good half an hour to 45 minutes away from the airport. So, you know, they hired a professional driver to come in, and he had the van. So we all got in and we headed out. And the first thing I remember is as we were coming out of the airport terminal itself in the van, it was like, you could call it 6 lanes of traffic, but it more resembled just like a bunch of vehicles just going one way, you know, and some were going the other way, and there really weren't lines on the street or anything like that. It was just a very chaotic traffic plan, or lack of plan. And you know, we were in this van and we just start easing out into this massive traffic going by, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what's wrong, you know? But it's just the way Manila is, and was, especially back then. Really, there were no rules. So this guy, he gets in and basically just inch your way into the traffic, and then they stop, and then finally we just kind of made a left and had to stop traffic all the way around, and very chaotic to me. And I thought, wow, this is something else. And I kind of expected, my expectation was it's going to be a little bit like Mexico, which I'd never been to Mexico, but I'd seen a lot of stuff on TV, and so it kind of was like that. But we got out in the city, and it was stop and go for a while, and then we got out on a pretty nice highway. It kind of resembled a U.S. interstate, and you know, we're going towards Pampanga, and a little town called San Machas, which is close to San Fernando, Pampanga, in Luzon, there in the Philippines. So we're out there, we're flying down this road, and they're all catching up behind me. I'm sitting in the front seat, and the driver's over here, and they're all behind me. And I look back, check on my wife every once in a while, and they're just chit-chatting, and I have no idea at all what's going on. So we're probably in the car for 45 minutes in a van, and they said, do you want to stop? And I'm like, well, yeah, I might stop and, you know, use the restroom. They kept asking me, do you want something to eat? You know, are you hungry? And they, to be honest, they were very caring about my well-being and my situation. So, you know, that was nice. So we stop at this, I'm going to call it a truck stop. It was a rest stop of some sort. It had a big gas station, had a, you know, big lines where you could get gas, and there were some bigger trucks in there. And so that was pretty familiar. But what happened next kind of caught me off guard. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to get out, you know, and go into the truck stop and use the restroom and maybe get a drink or something and come back out. No big deal, right? Well, this enters her uncle into the picture here, or into the story. His name is Augusto. They call him Bups, you know, which is, I guess it's Kapapangan for uncle or whatever, but he was Bups, okay? He's probably, back then, he was in his 40s, and he kind of had a reputation, from what I had heard, the stories that I'd heard over the years, that he'd went to Saudi Arabia, he'd worked in construction there, and he's a good-looking guy, you know, and, you know, the straight black hair, he had the glasses, and he had the decent-looking clothes on, and, you know, thin guy, and the only thing I really have a reference for this guy, Augusto, or Bups, was that this picture that my wife had, or I had seen, of him doing this karate kick like in midair. I don't know where they took it, whether it was in Saudi Arabia or what, but he had quite a reputation for being, knowing martial arts, okay? So this is the guy that he gets out, and he's looking around like this, and I kind of get concerned. I'm like, wow, is this a dangerous place or what? And I know the Philippines, it's a developing country, and so you hear all the warnings, this and that, and so he jumps out and he's looking around like this, and he waves me on, and I had to follow him, and the whole time his head's just on a swivel like this, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Are we in danger? Am I going to be, is there a threat of kidnapping or something like this? And looking back, I don't really think there was much, but the fact that they thought there probably was, it was a real deal for them. And they didn't want anything to happen to me. I mean, I'm married into the family at this point. So, probably going to hear some music go by. So anyway, we walk in, and he's in front of me, and I got to follow him, and he just keeps looking back at me, motioning me to where to go, and went in the restroom and everything. And by that time, I'm in the restroom, and I'm, standing there at the urinal. I'm just like, I'm looking around, like, oh my God, is somebody going to pop out from one of the stalls, and hold a knife to my throat or something? Like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But he was there, and then I turned around to wash my hands and to leave, and he wasn't anywhere to be found. So, oh my gosh, just for a second, and I walked toward the door of the restroom and walked out, and he was right there. So, and we walked and we got back in, but that was kind of a surreal experience. I kind of felt like a political prisoner, or maybe a deposed dictator or something like that. I mean, I just had this entourage following me back to the van. It's like, is everything going to be okay? So it was a little bit, I was a little bit taken aback by that, but we got back in the van, and we go on into Pampanga, and we get there and we drive, and we get into this little barangay, and it's like a little gate to the community. It's San Machas, or in English we'd say St. Matthew. St. Matthias is how they spell it, San Machas. But it's just a small barangay, and Augusto, or Bops, he was actually a barangay official in that little town. So he kind of had some connections, and if things went wrong or you had a problem, he was the guy to go to. So he's, to me at that point, he was kind of a character, and a guy you could trust and kind of rely on, and he'd make you feel safe wherever you went. So, nobody messed with Bops, especially, if you're in that barangay, everybody knows him. So anyway, we go down this little gravel road or dirt road, and there's just houses on each side, and we just kind of come to this, I thought, stop right in the middle of the road. Wow, what's going on? Well, evidently we were there. And so everybody starts getting out of the van, and I don't know why, I just remember, nobody would let me carry any luggage, but so they all got the luggage and everything, and so I'm walking where they're pointing me to, and it's this little alley, probably less than 10 feet wide. And so we walked in. I don't even know if we're actually there yet. I have no idea, and nobody's filling me in. I'm just like, I'm the Cano, I'm the white guy, the Americano guy. So I'm just following what they say to do. So I step across this little stream of water that's kind of just, going down the road there, and we walk down this little concrete pathway, and there's like a little door open there, and come to find out this is his house, okay? But we walked beside, there was another couple of little homes there, or doorways, and it's kind of like almost all one complex there. And we walk in, and of course we are completely wore out. It's very, very hot in this house, and they made it as cool as they could, but they didn't have any air conditioning, so forget that. That's not going to happen. So anyway, we go in, and they said, well, come on upstairs. They wanted us to rest, so that was great. We go up this little set of steps, and we turn right, and they open the door to this little bedroom, and it's like, we've prepared this especially for you, for you and Flora. And of course, they didn't say that, but I could tell they'd set this aside for us to stay in, and they wanted us to stay with them. And that was really nice. And the hospitality really in the Philippines, and especially in Pampanga, or probably all over the Philippines, but I experienced a great amount of hospitality. They considered me and my wife before they considered themselves. We always got the best of everything they could give us. And it is really, I can remember standing upstairs before we went to our bedroom, and we're just standing there in the doorways to the right, and the family is right there, and Bops is there and his wife, and some other people that are there. It just was really an emotional time for me for some reason. I don't really understand why. But he was saying something, and I don't know, I just kind of felt compelled to say something, before we take off and go into the bedroom. And I remember I just really thanked him for, their hospitality and staying in the house. And sometimes I just almost broke down and started crying. Tears came to my eyes, and I was just really grateful, These people don't have much to offer, but they were given everything plus, for us. And that's what you find in the Philippines. That's not everyone, but most people have your back here. They don't want to see you hurt. They have very good intentions. They want to make you feel at home as much as absolutely possible. They give you everything that they can. So, that was great. We turned and went into the door, and for the first time since we landed, we were by ourselves. We shut the door, and I look in the room, and there's a couple of little thin mattresses of foam about like that, and they had a little sheet over them, and then a little flat pillow at the end, and there was a fan on the floor, and a little window that had bars on it, And so we laid down there just on the concrete floor. I don't think there was any tile, just concrete floor, and a fan. Well, we were so wore out. I couldn't believe it. I thought, I'll never be able to sleep here, But somehow or other, about 2.5 hours later, I woke up. Fan's still going. I'd got some sleep, so that was pretty cool. And that was my first introduction, and it was quite a bit to take in at the time. And I never will forget, we got up that afternoon, and I think we'd went one other place, maybe to meet some family or whatever, and we had a nice dinner, and we come back that evening, and I don't know, it was my first time in a developing country, and living among people that had considerably less than I have ever had in my life. And, again, the hospitality was out of this world. So, we kind of get ourselves together, and then we go down and take a shower. That's a whole nother issue, a whole nother story. But downstairs, they had one bathroom downstairs. And, of course, if you're Filipino, when you walk in the bathroom real quick, you walk into the bathroom, they have a toilet, of course, and then they have like this, it's a brick, everything is block, right? Everything is hollow block, they call it. But then they have this hollow block that has like decorations or whatever, and air can pass through, and you can kind of see outside, and people can't really see in that well. So, and then in the wall, there's just a little faucet that comes out, you can turn off and turn on, and then there's a 5-gallon bucket on the floor, and this is probably 2 feet off the ground, just higher than the 5-gallon bucket. And then there's this little plastic thing with a handle on it, about that deep, just floating around in that bucket full of water. Okay, that's interesting. So, but come to find out, that's how you take your shower. One of the things you do with it. But you fill the bucket up with water, you take they call it a tabo, but it's just like a big scoop, for us in America. And you pour it over your head, and the water's cold. Not as cold as our water in America, thank God for that, because it's so hot. and your body's so hot at that point, it kind of makes you shiver, and wow, your first tabo shower is quite an experience. But we got cleaned up and got upstairs, and there's lizards on the ceiling about this long, and there's the fans going, and I'm thinking, man, am I ever going to go to sleep here? And I think we were still pretty exhausted at that point. And I never will forget, and this is what I really want to get to. We went to sleep. I don't know how, but the next morning, we're laying on that little thin mat and a little pillow, and it's just like, kind of wake up, the fan's going, and I look around, and I really didn't realize where I was at. It was, you ever wake up and you just, for some reason it doesn't click what you've been doing or where you're at. You're in a strange place. And I wake up and I look around, and again, I didn't really, for a second, I didn't think, I look up and I see this window, and it's got bars on it. I hear strange noises out in the street, and the fan is just whirling around, and I look around, it's a concrete floor, and this all happened like in the space of 3 seconds. So it's not like I was in some kind of delusion or anything, but wow, I thought it was like I was in prison or something. Just for a second, I had, just a strange reaction. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we're in the Philippines, okay. And not too much later, maybe I stirred my wife awake, and I hear this little knock at the door. And I kind of like, what's going on? I open the door, and there's Bops, my wife's uncle, her dad's brother, and he's holding a cup of coffee, which I later found out is called cafe. So that's what they call it. And so he hands me this cup of cafe, and I look at it, kind of smell it, and I thought it was expected to be coffee. And I took a sip of it, and I thought it was hot chocolate, because what they do is they put in the Nescafe Classico, which is really a dark coffee, and it's an instant coffee. Probably hadn't tasted instant coffee since sometime in the 70s, and then they put like 2 tablespoons of coffee mate in there, and then they put like a tablespoon of brown sugar. They stir it all up, and that was their cafe. So he handed me that, and he had a cup in his hand. He said, come on. So I follow him. I've got my cup of coffee. We walk down these concrete stairs and kind of turn to the left, and on the right, his wife Cecile, she's making breakfast, okay? And smelling pretty darn good. But anyway, it's just a propane stove with 2 burners. You see the hose go down to the bottom, and there's a propane tank down there. Probably we'd call it like a $20 propane tank. And she's got 2 things going, and two different dishes. She's got a bunch of fried eggs off to the side on a plate. She's got hot dogs that are kind of scored on both sides. They're kind of weird looking to me, but I mean, they had hot dogs, and she's cooking longanisa, which is Filipino, and especially most longanisa or Filipino sausage, a lot of it is made in Pampanga, because Pampanga is known for the best cooks in the Philippines. They have that reputation. So whatever, Cecile was down there cooking everything. We walk out the little door that I walked in that morning, or the previous day, and we walk down and out to the dirt street, right? And there's little houses across the street over there, and he opens up this little door and pulls out this little wooden bench, sets it down. He takes a little cloth and he whips, he cleans it off, and he says, let's sit down here. So he doesn't speak English hardly at all. So we're not really communicating, but I understand he wants me to go downstairs and drink some coffee with him. So we sit back and we sit down on the little bench that he'd made, probably about this high off the ground. And I just start to take in the scenes that I see that morning. And of course, everything's brand new to me, but here's kind of the way it is. If I look to my right, I look over, and there was a rooster on to the right of us, the next door, and he had a little rope or a little string around one of his feet, and it was, over to the right side there was a little stick stuck in the ground. I was like, wow, okay, so there's a rooster over there. And across the street, there's little kids in uniforms, little girls and little boys. They had these little colorful uniforms on, white shirt, blue skirt or blue pants, black shoes. The girls may have had some kind of little white stockings on, black hair. They're all just, and they're chit-chatting, and jeepneys are coming by and picking them. They'll get into a jeepney or get onto a tricycle, which is, if you don't know, it's just a motorcycle with a little sidecar. And the little children were getting picked up, and they're going off to school. And you see this play out. Maybe this house over here hires one guy. This one over here, they have a little van they get in. And it's just a flurry of activity at that point in the morning. And it's, for the whole day, it's pretty nice. It's pretty cool. And so we're just sitting back, kind of taking it in. And, there's a lot of activity in the street. And then, kind of looking around, trying to communicate a little bit. Look at that, or look at this. Little dogs running by, cats, or whatever. And people saying good morning, to you. And of course, you're always a spectacle. If you're not in a big city in the Philippines, you kind of, and you're a white guy or a foreigner in general, you're going to stand out. So, you get the good morning, or a lot of them said, hi, Joe. They say hi, Joe, for whatever reason, G.I. Joe, I guess. Because, there's a big military presence in the Philippines for years and years. So anyway, all of a sudden it's like somebody just pulled the rug out, and all the activity was gone, right? It just got quiet. The streets were clear. And that's one thing I really like about the Philippines. It's in the morning, if you get up early, before everybody gets out, say 5 o'clock, 5:30, you start to see things happen. Somebody will be outside, and this was the case that morning. Somebody will be outside, and they'll have this little broom. Looks like it's made out of sticks, and they'll be sweeping up trash that's been thrown down, or sweeping rocks, or whatever. Maybe, who knows, little pieces of paper. And then then they were like sweep it up in a little pile, and they'd start a little fire, and they would sweep the other trash in there, and they kind of clean up their place in the morning. But after that, nothing, except for maybe an occasional motorcycle go by, a jeepney would go by, and you go through that, and then it's just time to start your day, whatever you're going to do. So that was my first experience of a morning like that in the Philippines. And we went back in the house, and we had eggs, we had longanisa, we had hot dogs, of course rice. We had a lot of rice, and we had our breakfast. And I don't remember what was on the agenda that day, but I do remember my first experience, my first night and arrival, my first afternoon and my first night and morning in the Philippines. And I never will forget it. I never will forget just the sight of Cecile, cooking, and I don't know, there's just something about it. There's something about the Philippines that got me. And ever since then, ever since I've been back in the States, I've always been homesick for the Philippines. If you like this story, subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell if you'd like to see more videos. I've got tons and tons of stories about the Philippines, and this one's went about 28 minutes. I apologize for that. Maybe I can edit it and make it a little bit shorter. But my love for the Philippines runs deep, and I'm very passionate about it. And I'm always going to try to look on the bright side of things. That's just who I am. I'm not, happy-go-lucky all the time. Bad things happen to me just like they do you. But if you're considering coming to the Philippines with the right attitude, you'll develop a love for it as well. If you're Filipino, make your comment down there in the comments section. I'd love to answer comments, and so fire away if you have questions. If you're thinking about coming to the Philippines, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be posting more content almost on a daily basis, hopefully. So, yeah, but that's all for now, and I appreciate your time. If you made it this long, you're a freaking hero. and have a great day.